So what the heck is going on in South Carolina? Why have we had so many earthquakes and why have they all been in Elgin? Is there a big one coming? Well, first off, we're going to take a look at the intensity by zip code of reports of shaking from this latest, greatest one. That was a 3.6 magnitude that happened on June 29th, and it was at 7:03 p.m. We also had one just 5 hours prior to that. That was a 3.5. And we had one Sunday at 1:31. That was a 3.4 magnitude. And there was some pretty heavy shaking around Elgin. That's where they've all been occurring. And of course, around Columbia. There was also some pretty strong shaking towards Augusta as well, but overall speaking, people felt this from Greenville to Charlotte, through Terra, and even down to Myrtle Beach. So people around the state and other states felt this earthquake as well. Zooming on in a little bit closer, these are swarm quakes, so they all happen within a very small area in a certain amount of time. They can be days, weeks, or in our case, months, and they're in a 2.6 mile radius of each other, all of them so far. This is Interstate 20 going through the middle of your screen here. This is US Highway 1 at the top and US Highway 601 here on the right side. So they're all within a small area, putting some vertical and horizontal measurements. Vertically, they're about 2 or 4.8 miles vertically, 2 miles horizontally. So in a very small area around Elgin, you got Lugoff and Elgin to the east of there. And taking a look at the fault lines, that's why we have so many in Elgin, because there's a Pax Mountain fault system that runs through the northeast corner to the southwest corner of the state, and Elgin happens to fall on one of those fault lines. And most of the areas that are close to the coast do have lots of fault lines, so these are what creates earthquakes. And we've got earthquakes all the time in South Carolina. People just don't feel them because they're not that big. In fact, South Carolina probably has an earthquake every day, just not as big. And these swarm quakes happen all over the country. They're normal for the earth to do, but just not normal for it to happen in South Carolina. They're much more frequent over in Colorado and California, so this is nothing compared to what happens out here. It's just not normal for it to happen in South Carolina. Normal for it to happen elsewhere, though. So taking a 3D look here at the Earth, this is the Earth's crust, and we have tectonic plates, a huge tectonic plate around North America that runs underneath it, and these crusts will create cracks, and that's the fault line, and that's when they try and bump up and ride over each other, and that's when you start having earthquakes. And eventually what causes these swarm quakes is you get water that runs in these cracks, and water obviously is slippery, so that's going to cause more intense and more earthquakes to happen. So that is why we're having a lot of these earthquakes here in Elgin. We have swarm quakes, all because water is coming in through these cracks here in the Earth's crust. So going back to the intensity, that's pretty much why we're having so many earthquakes. No, there will not be a big one coming from this. There shouldn't be any need to freak out, but do know there will be more earthquakes coming from this. Some could be stronger than the ones we've been having. And if you do feel any shaking, please make sure you share that with the United States Geological Survey so they can fill that in maps like these.